All right, welcome to the 2020 Civil Rights Training presented by Second Harvest and the Food Group. My name is Taylor Day and I'm an agency compliance specialist with Second Harvest Heartland.
My name is Maria Bonilla. I'm with the Food Group, also an agency relations specialist.
My name is Roel Ramos. I'm with Second Harvest Heartland, and I am also an agency compliance specialist.
Today we'll be going over civil rights training and requirements, data privacy and confidentiality. We'll talk a little bit about equity and access. We'll go over TFAP guidelines and requirements. We'll get a chance to test our knowledge in scenarios. And then finally, you'll be given a link on where you can officially test your knowledge. Okay, so let's get started. We'll go through civil rights training and requirements first. So training requirements. At minimum, one person per agency is required to go through the in-depth training of this presentation. And if you're watching this video, that's what you're doing right now. Frontline staff and volunteers who interact with program participants or applicants and supervisors of frontline staff must go through this annual training. Civil rights training should be presented to regular, one-time, or group volunteers throughout the year. So essentially everyone must go through this training if you're interacting with patrons at your organization. Civil rights is the law. You need to educate yourself and your staff and volunteers on protected classes. This will help clients feel welcome, safe, and included when they access your services. This helps protect your agency from liability and civil rights violation claims or lawsuits. What you see pictured here is the 12 national protected classes, federally protected. I also want to point out that in the state of Minnesota, there's 2 additional classes that are protected, and that is creed and sex. So do be aware of all 14 of the protected classes. Okay, we're going to go through the different types of discrimination. The first one up is disparate treatment. This is when, because of a protected class, someone is treated differently. Next one is disparate impact, and this is a discriminatory result on a protected class resulting from an action or rule. Lastly, reprisal or retaliation is negative treatment due to prior civil rights activity by an individual or his or her family or known associates, or for cooperating with an investigation. If you partake in any kind of discrimination, your agency might be sued either on a local level or on a federal level. So please, please, please be hyper attentive of your policies.
Data privacy and confidentiality. Data privacy and individuals' rights. An individual can refuse to provide the private information requested. An individual has a right to access their private data at any time. An individual has a right to correct their private data at any time. And an individual has the right to consent release to other parties. What can be shared and what's private? Protected information is personal and protected data. Examples are date of birth, social security number, or medical records. Private data can only be viewed by the subject and people that work with the information. For example, public assistance information, etc. Please be sure to get a signed release to share an individual's private information. Proper storage. Secure electronic files. Do not store at home. They must be stored on site, either in an office or at the program location. This can be either in a locked cabinet or an office. Also, please limit number of staff or volunteers who have access to the data. Remember to store information at least 1 year or 7 years if you are a participating TFAP program. How to properly dispose of data. Either shred paper files or securely delete from all electronic files. On a side note, the Minnesota Pollution Control prohibits papers from being burned. When can you share information? On aggregated reports to the food bank, Hunger Solutions, Minnesota Department of Human Services, OEO, and currently through Let's Solve Hunger. Analyzing data and mapping need using a third-party application. Examples are Community Close-Up or Map the Meal Gap. Why do we need this information? For aggregated data reports, there's a need to track unduplicated services. Personal information is not shared without consent, even with other food shelves, so please be aware of this. How and when to share stories. Sharing stories with the public can help educate and also support fundraising efforts. Always talk with the client about sharing their story and make sure to get a media release. It can be anonymous, but also protect yourself by getting a release. Be very cautious about doing this in small towns or tight-knit communities, as everybody knows everyone. Additional forms and policies. Tennyson warnings, data privacy notice, release of information, media releases, confidentiality policy, volunteer policies can all be provided through your local food bank. They can provide you with templates. Please just ask us.
All right, next we're going to talk about equity and access as it relates to civil rights training and your food shelf. You may have seen versions or similar pictures like this in a previous equity or civil rights training. This is a good visual depiction of the difference between equity and equality. So in the first image, it's assumed that everyone will benefit from the same supports. They are being treated equally. And you can see that it's not equal, they all can't see the game. And in the second image, individuals are given different supports to make it possible for them to have equal access to the game. So they're being treated equitably, they can all see the game. However, in the third image, all three can see the game without any supports or accommodations because the cause of inequity was addressed. The systematic barrier has been removed. So be sure to think about this as with programs that exist within your program or with things that exist in terms of equity and equality. Equity and hunger relief is the fair and just distribution of food in a community where everyone has the opportunity to live their best life. So for an organization, this could mean creating a time and safe space for staff, board members, or volunteers to talk about the root causes of hunger. It could also mean conducting focus groups or surveys out in your community where people are already gathered. This could be community centers, local shops, faith-based organizations, or anywhere else that you think would work in your community. Cultural competencies. So this is a flowchart talking about cultural competency and what it could look like at your organization. So start thinking about creating cultural responsiveness as a value. So conducting research to understand who you serve at your food shelf, recruiting staff or volunteers who represent the community that can be available for translation or to work with participants, and create an open and respectful atmosphere. Some concrete changes you can implement are to source familiar and appropriate foods to distribute, implement a choice shopping model, have available walk-in hours, and have translated signs with images for those whose English is not their first language or may not also be able to read, so be sure to have images as well. What you can do in the community. Do outreach and educate about your food shelf and resources you offer to those in your community. Be sure to collaborate and partner with ethnic leaders and organizations to learn more about their culture and to spread the word about your agency. And throughout this, you can be meeting with stakeholders and clients to learn and engage with them about their culture, and then be sure to bring back this information and suggestions you've learned from the community to implement at your agency. promoting your program. Be sure to be doing creative outreach and work with underserved groups. You can contact community groups and advocacy groups using special formats to reach disabled populations or other populations that might not typically visit your food shelf. Be sure to use other languages to reach people with limited English proficiency. And get creative. So that could be TV commercials, radio, posters, flyers, your supermarket bulletin boards, or clubs, or libraries, or schools. And list goes on, but you might know what would work well in your community. And be sure to create a welcoming environment at your program. Think about your location and hours, or how accessible is your location? Are your hours accessible to everyone? And what about people that are working during the day? And think about language access. So make sure that your food shelf or your meal program feels culturally appropriate and relevant. Also specific needs. So try new types of programming. So things like home delivery and mobile distribution. And overall, just relax the boundaries and withhold judgment. It takes a lot for a participant to walk into a program, so think about that as they're being served and really just walk a mile in their shoes.
Customer service. As a golden rule, please remember to be polite. Avoid sarcasm. Try to be empathetic. Understand that people may not know the rules or understand how programs work. They may feel uncomfortable coming to ask for help. Smile when appropriate. Make people feel welcome and valued. Explain the policy. Let them know the policy is to keep everyone safe and to ensure fair treatment for all. Don't be afraid to apologize. Don't feel you need to have the last word. Treat others the way they want to be treated, or at least be aware of what that is. Conflict resolution. Always have a written and posted policy for dealing with unacceptable behavior and conflicts. Encourage other staff, food shelf staff, to try to remain calm, try to explain the situation, get help, especially if threats or violence is possible. Use alternative dispute resolution. ADR techniques, examples are mediation or arbitration. Please make sure that you have an open and clear process for making complaints. This would be your grievance procedure. Also, have surveys and focus groups and listening sessions. And remember, above all, we try building relationships. Additional resources, immigration resources, are listed here. The Immigrant Law Center of Minnesota, www.ilcm.org, Mid-Minnesota Legal Aid, www.mylegalaid.org, and your local food bank.
Thank you for completing the General Civil Rights Training for 2020. Be sure to complete the quiz to receive your certificate of completion. The quiz can be found at the jot form link below. If you are a TFAP program, please continue on for more program-specific training. So this is going to be an overview of TFAP guidelines and requirements for your program. All levels of administration of programs that receive federal financial assistance need to understand civil rights-related laws, regulations, procedures, and directives. So this is people at the federal level, the state level, at the food bank like us, hunger relief agencies, staff, and volunteers. Civil rights compliance reviewers also need special training to perform review responsibilities. State and local agencies have flexibility in how to provide training. So it could be in the classroom, online, staff meetings, all are possibilities, just depending on what works best for your program. And as a reminder, civil rights training is required annually. The goals of civil rights training are equal, fair, and respectful treatment of all applicants and beneficiaries. Working towards the elimination of illegal barriers that prevent or deter people from receiving benefits. It's also about making sure that people understand their rights and responsibilities as participants. The responsibility for civil rights starts at the United States Department of Justice and goes down to federal departments such as the USDA. That then goes to federal agencies like Food and Nutrition Services and recipients of federal financial assistance, so state and local providers. Public notification is a big part of TFAP as well as civil rights. People need to know about TFAP and know their rights. Really be sure to pay special attention and go through special efforts for underserved populations. And you should always be marketing your program and the fact that it does not discriminate. Display the "And Justice for All" poster and make sure that all your additional forms for intake besides the required TFAP eligibility form are labeled voluntary or optional. As a reminder, as stated in the manual, the USDA federal regulations do not allow TFAP distribution sites to place extra requirements for participants, in addition to requirements stated in this manual. Added forms, meetings with intake workers, and other processes must be optional. TFAP food shelves are required to explain to participants that filling out additional forms and/or providing additional information is their choice and in no way prevents them from getting food. Be sure to include the required non-discrimination statement on all appropriate FNS and agency publications on your websites, posters, and all informational materials. Always be conveying the message of equal opportunity in all of your photos and other graphics that are used to provide program or program-related information. This is also a good time to remind you that all program participants cannot be required to provide mail or ID in order to access food. They can be requested, mail and ID can be requested, but again, it cannot be required. As a food shelf or a meal program or a TFAP participant, whatever your program is, you are required to be compliant with all civil rights laws, regulations, and requirements. You must attend required trainings, provide language services, and accommodate people with disabilities. Remember to have equal treatment for religious organizations and for anybody accessing your food shelf. Public notifications are updated in a timely manner, so make sure that you are notifying all your participants about any changes, and that all data you're collecting is being stored privately and in a confidential manner. You must participate in any compliance reviews and use a complaint process that can be posted for clients and therefore can resolve conflicts in a timely and respectful manner. And always fair and equal customer service. Site visits are conducted annually or biannually with your local food bank. And during the TFAP grant period, the Minnesota DHS or OEO will conduct a review of 10% or 20 food shelves throughout the state, determined by a risk-based assessment. At least half must be those that are most at risk. The other half will be selected at random. This means that in a year, you could get a visit from your local food bank, as well as TFAP at the state level. The following will be included in the site visit: program eligibility requirements and intake process, along with food storage, including checking for cleanliness, appropriate temperatures in your fridges and freezers, areas locked if they need to be, and pest control measures. And remember, you must be compliant with the State Human Rights Act, the AIDS Discrimination Act of 1975, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 as amended, the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990, and Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 as amended. Copies or explanation of these are in the appendix of the manual, including the language proficiency poster. You can also contact somebody from your local food bank and they can walk you through these policies. As a reminder, you should always have a Justice for All poster displayed at your program. And the one on the right is the new Justice for All poster this year. TFAP should be sending those out to you all along with the language proficiency poster. You are also required to always have a grievance policy, which is your instructions on how to file a complaint, and an ADA plan posted on site. A new requirement as of last year and continuing on is that you must have your language proficiency poster posted on site, which lays out that there are language interpreter options at sites. Although remember, sites are responsible for providing these resources. Voter registration information also needs to be made available, along with SNAP or EBT information. Records regarding receipt and distribution of TFAP for 7 years following the end of the TFAP grant period to which they pertain. So this means that you need to keep all TFAP information, including client data records, on file for 7 years. Remember, you cannot sell any USDA commodities or require participation in non-TFAP program activities. You also have to maintain a signed TFAP site distribution agreement, which is renewed every 2 years. If for some reason during one of these compliance visits, some of these items are not met, there will be corrective actions. And first thing will be to cease inappropriate actions. Next will be to institute appropriate procedures within the approved time frame. And the food bank will work with the food shelf or the meal program to meet these compliance standards. As a reminder, TFAP and the Minnesota Food Shelf Grant are linked. And if an agency does not comply with the requirements of one, participation will be revoked for both.
All right, now it's time to test your knowledge. So we're gonna go through a few scenarios here. Up first is scenario 1. Chris is a client who visits the food shelf on a regular basis. The last few visits, Chris has been very rude, loud, and disruptive to staff, volunteers, and other clients. Food shelf staff have tried to have a conversation with him on multiple occasions about his behavior with no luck. Finally, staff agree that Chris cannot visit the food shelf anymore. They call him and send him a letter outlining their decision. Is this the proper way to handle this situation? Safety must come first. Ideally, your program has a code of conduct or rights and responsibilities policy that helps set expectations for acceptable behavior from clients, volunteers, and staff alike. We always want to be sensitive to the high stress lives of the people we serve and address behavior rather than the person. We also need to ensure the safety of everyone at our sites. Having a policy in place is also helpful in cases where you need to find alternative ways to provide a pathway to food, such as using a proxy, delivery to someone's car or home, or emergency to-go boxes. Sample policies and support is available from your food bank, so please reach out to us. Scenario number 2. In order to ensure that there are interpreters available, a food pantry wants to mandate that all Ukrainian-speaking participants be served on the second Friday of each month. Is this allowable since the intent is to provide good service and not discriminate? What do you guys think? This would not be allowable because it is a form of discrimination based on national origin. It's a disparate impact. The pantry needs to accommodate people whenever they need assistance. The pantry could advertise days on which it has interpreters on site, but people who speak a particular language cannot be required to come only on certain days. Also, as a reminder, you should always be trying to provide interpreter services as needed, not just on certain days. Additionally, remember that we do have the Minnesota Food Helpline available where you can call in and get interpreter services. Just as a reminder, that number is 888-711-1151. Scenario number 3. Mary is a staff person at Townville Food Shop. Someone came in and told several volunteers that they saw Jody, a client at Townville Food Shelf, visiting a nearby shelf in Bigger City. The volunteers are asking her what they should do. Mary isn't sure, so she calls the director at Bigger City Food Shelf. They talk about Jody and go through their records to discuss Jody's address, household info, and when she visited their food shelves. Both food shelves receive TFAP commodities and grants. All clients, including Jody, signed a data privacy form once a year at intake. Has either food shelf violated Jody's civil rights or data privacy? Since neither food shelf has refused to serve Jody or set up any rules that prevent her from being served because of her status with regards to assistance or as part of any other protected class, her civil rights have not been violated. However, neither Mary nor the director at the other food shelf are allowed to discuss anything personal or private about Jody, such as her address, details about her household, or the fact that she received service from either organization. In order to do this, they each have to obtain her written permission to do so via release of information form. So we just want to thank you guys for listening in today. Thank you for completing the civil rights training. Please make sure to complete the quiz using the link below.
And thank you for participating.